Welcome to the deep dive. Today we're diving into a topic often, well, kept pretty quiet. Non-disclosure agreements, NDAs. Specifically, we're looking at how they're being reformed globally, especially when they've been used, sometimes misused, to silence victims of harassment and abuse. Our sources show a really powerful shift happening worldwide.
Yeah, definitely. Our mission for you today is to unpack these global changes, sort of highlight the key trends, and show you why these legal shifts matter. For individuals, for workplaces everywhere, it's really about rebalancing power.
That sounds critical. So how did we even get here to this point of such widespread reevaluation?
Well, the hashtag MeToo movement was truly the catalyst, no question. It sparked just intense global scrutiny of NDAs, focusing on how they were sometimes misused, to shield perpetrators and silence victims.
Yeah.
And that led directly to this widespread reevaluation and, importantly, actual legislative action. It's pushing for a fundamental rethink.
Okay, so if hashtag #MeToo was the spark, where are we seeing the biggest changes actually happening now on the ground?
We're seeing different paths, but there's a clear theme emerging. In the United States, for example, quite a few states, think California, New York, New Jersey, they now ban NDAs in specific cases like sexual harassment, discrimination, or retaliation. And nationally, there's the Speak Out Act from 2022. That prohibits NDAs agreed to before a dispute involving sexual assault.
Okay, so that's the US. What about internationally?
Right. Moving across the Atlantic, Ireland has taken a strong step.
Yeah.
They've made NDAs unenforceable if they're used to hide criminal activity. That includes sexual abuse. That's a big move. And then in Canada, specifically Prince Edward Island, they passed North America's first full law back in 2022 banning NDAs for harassment or discrimination. But here's the key part: unless the survivor explicitly asks for confidentiality.
Interesting. So the choice lies with the survivor there.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It's fascinating how different places are tackling this.
It's clear the law is changing, definitely. But how much is legislation versus maybe wider cultural shifts? Are we seeing that too?
Oh, absolutely. That's a great point. In Sweden, for instance, you see a really strong cultural push for transparency. So NDAs covering abuse are actually quite rare there, and using one could lead to serious reputational backlash, even without super strict legal bans like elsewhere. Culture does a lot of the work. And look at South Africa. You have legal activists pushing hard for stricter rules, arguing that some NDAs clash with constitutional rights like freedom of expression, dignity. What's emerging is this powerful new legal idea. The right to speak your truth, especially about abuse, is starting to override those traditional secrecy clauses.
That is a huge shift in legal thinking. Okay, speaking of significant developments, let's zoom in on the UK. That feels like a really key piece right now. What's happening there?
Right. The UK government has introduced some important amendments to their employment rights bill. Basically, these would make NDAs and also non-disparagement clauses, which are similar, but focus on stopping negative comments null and void, legally useless, if they're used to stop employees reporting harassment, discrimination, or sexual misconduct. And this applies to future agreements.
Okay, so significant changes, but it's not like they're getting rid of all NDAs, right?
Precisely. That's important. Legitimate NDAs, for protecting commercial secrets or trade information, those are still fine. The whole point is protecting victims and witnesses. There are even proposals that victims would have to explicitly request confidentiality and get independent legal advice first.
So this brings the UK more in line with Ireland, Canada, some US states we mentioned. Why is this step so impactful, though?
Well, it's seen as a really critical step to tackle what activists like Zelda Perkins from Can't Buy My Silence call gagging clauses. It really aims to empower victims, let them speak out without fearing legal action. The common thread isn't just banning NDAs, it's fundamentally shifting the focus. Confidentiality now has to serve the victim's interest, not the institutions or the perpetrators.
Makes sense. But are there counter-arguments? Any concerns that maybe these changes could backfire somehow? Perhaps for victims wanting a quicker resolution?
Yes, that concern is definitely out there. Some legal experts worry that if you remove NDAs entirely as an option, it might actually discourage settlements, which could potentially force more victims into those long, drawn-out tribunal processes and the formal legal hearings. The government seems to acknowledge this, the need for a balanced approach. You don't want to take away a tool that some victims might actually find useful for a private, faster outcome. So yeah, there's this tension, balancing speedy justice versus comprehensive justice. It's a classic policy challenge, really.
Right. So the clear trend seems to be this victim-centered consent model in progressive laws. But enforcement, that's not always easy, is it?
No, definitely not. Loopholes can persist, and you still have power imbalances, right? Fear of retaliation, or maybe just the desire to move on, can still pressure people into silence, even if an NDA is technically banned or unenforceable. Which brings up a really important question. How do we make sure these new laws actually empower people in the real world, not just on paper?
So wrapping this up, what does this all mean for you listening? Well, it means there's a powerful shift underway. It's rebalancing power dynamics, reshaping workplaces globally. This deep dive really shows how global movements, often fueled by incredible individual bravery, can drive real, concrete legal change across borders.
Yeah, and it leaves us with a final thought, maybe something provocative. Legal reforms are crucial, absolutely. But what other systemic changes are needed? Changes in corporate accountability, maybe in our own courage and cultural norms? What else needs to happen to truly dismantle these cultures of silence?
Something to definitely mull over. Until next time, keep digging deeper.